Well, it's just arrived in the post, the 6 Moons Design Lunar Solo. So we'll pop this up for a wee first look around. Looks encouragingly lightweight. You insert the main pole into a little sleeve just to secure it, and it stops the point ripping through the nylon. Getting the right length of the pole is a bit of a pain in the backside, frankly, because you're meant to set it to a certain height, but I find it difficult to actually judge. I just kind of do it on the basis of just trying to guess it until it's under the right tension. It's about 660 grams, not including pole and pegs, which is why I bought it actually, because I was looking for something very light for summer 3-season use. And I'd seen some old videos on this one and thought, I'll give this a go. I've actually spent one night in it so far, although I haven't been able to film it, on the Isle of Arran in fairly windy conditions, and it was excellent. As you can probably see by the Neo Air in here, it's actually very, very roomy for one person. And the night I spent in it, despite it being a single skin tent, silicone nylon, there was absolutely no condensation, but that was probably just luck of the conditions more than anything else. Looking at it side on, you'll see the depth from the inner tent backwards. I say inner tent, but it's actually kind of hybrid, so the inner is sewn to the fly sheet, although it doesn't have a full inner roof. So it keeps bugs out, but in effect you're sleeping in a single skin tarp. But that's why it's so light, which is what I really like about it. You can use your second walking pole here just to pull up the tab, and that gives you more headroom when you're sleeping. I did do that the first night and it worked very well, and it seems very roomy, plenty of room around the head and around the feet, and you can choose to put the pole at either end depending on the conditions in which way you're sleeping. Let's say you're on a slope, so the equivalent is at this end as well, but you don't actually have to use that at all. I've put it up in very windy conditions today. There's a wee bit of a storm passing through, just to give you a better idea about stability, just because all it uses is a single walking pole. So I've used my Lecky pole here, and as you can probably see, it fits up inside, just inside the top vent here. It's very hard to see in this light, but it fits into a little nylon reinforced sleeve at the top there, which seems to work quite well. And there's an elasticated loop at the bottom, goes around the handle. There's also an eyelet down here, so if you reverse the pole, I guess you could use it the other way around, and the point of your pole would go into the eyelet itself. If you look at the length of a Neo Air, which is a good size, there's plenty of room in here, and there's almost double the width. You could almost sleep two, which is pretty impressive for such a light tent. What I'll do is I'll show you the fly sheet, which is quite unusual once it's zipped up in the next sequence. The fly is just held back by tabs, elastic and toggles, fairly standard fare at both ends, as you can see here. And that one holds both the inner door and the outer fly sheet, or a combination of either. I just wanted to show you this in the half closed setup, which would allow you to cook or to shelter depending on the wind and the rain, and still leave part of the tent wide open. Interestingly enough, it's a very low tech but effective way of attaching the fly to this main line here. This line in effect holds the whole tent up, so it's under quite a lot of stress, so you have to make sure that pole's in, that peg is in very well, otherwise it could pull itself out because it's really holding the whole thing up. But all they use here is a Prusik knot, so you can actually move this up and down, and it self-tensions, so under stress it just locks itself off. It's a well-known climbing technique, but it works very well for a tent as well. I really like the idea of a tarp tent, but what I didn't like, especially in Scotland, is the way midges can get into the tent. So in effect this gives you the best of both worlds. You can see the inners attached to the fly there, but it is in effect only a mosquito net, and then you have a floating silicone floor and about 3 or 4 inches of mesh all the way around for ventilation. Comes with a two-way zip there, so you can get in and out very easily. It curves round at the bottom, and the door just hangs so it doesn't fall in the dirt, which is good. And I'll show you with the fly fully up in just a second. So this is the tent fully sealed up with the fly fully down, but if you look at, there's really what I would say is a massive foot gap at the front, which as long as you're aware of it in this design you don't mind. I actually watched somebody else's video, a chap who was doing I'm trying to remember where he was actually. I think he was in Dolomites or somewhere similar. The good thing about it was you can cook very easily still under cover. It doesn't afford an awful lot of privacy, but it's sufficient I think for 3 seasons. You know, you don't have to panic. It'll keep the rain and the wind mostly out, and it will allow you to cook under cover when a storm moves in. The only thing is, if you're on a campsite, if you have a look here, anyone happen to lie close to you or look fairly low will see you in your sleeping bag in all your glory. So you maybe have to position it a bit more carefully on a campsite. Inside it's very roomy. It's actually surprisingly roomy, very, very good for the weight, which is why I was really interested in the design. Not sure if I quite got the pole height right here, but there's a good, I'm 5'8", there's probably about another foot above me at the peak, and plenty of room in front of me here to cook. I'll close up the fly sheet in just a second to show you that as well, and I'll show you a wee bit of the interior, just so you get an idea of the size. It's very long, I think 6'2" is the maximum height you'd want to be inside this. Again, for the weight, pretty amazing amount of space to weight ratio. Well, as you can see, I'm inside here. The camera's getting waved about a wee bit because it's sitting on a floating ground sheet getting hit with the wind, but you can probably tell there is a lot of space. I mean, I can stretch out my arm towards the back of the tent, which is pretty impressive. Stretch out my arm into the vestibule and lay forward here, and it's very comfy. I'll show you the foot end as well, where the pole is, and just to give you an idea of the height there too. Again, just a wee look up towards the top there. I'm not sure if the exposure will show it very well. I'll try and change the exposure for you there. The door at the moment is pinned back. I'm lying with my head about a foot away from one end, and my feet probably have about another foot, foot and a half towards the bottom. You can see the venting around the sides, so there's a lot of indirect airflow, which I think helped the lack of condensation the first night I used it. But yeah, again, very impressed. That's enough space in there for a pack, clothing, bits and pieces left lying about. There's also a hanging loop somewhere up here. Don't know if I can see this. There you go. Which I guess is for a torch or something similar. The only strange thing I find about it, and I must mention this to Six Moons, is it hangs on the outside of the inner. It would be better to be on the inside down here. Again, leaving one half of the fly sheet open. I've got the mosquito net door shut now, which on a pleasant night would be a fine way just to fall asleep or to watch the view. I like the way you can pin the whole tent back, but this way no beasties get in, which has got to be one thing, or at least one feature better than just the normal tarp tent. In line with its simplistic nature, there's only one small pocket sewn into the ground sheet here. The ground sheet is obviously, I hope, waterproof. There's one seam which I haven't silicone sealed yet, which runs along the centre of the tent, just across here. Although I've silicone sealed the outer all the way around. And we had quite a lot of rain on Arran and it was fine, no problems. This stitching up here, a single line through the double layer of nylon, looks a wee bit flimsy, so I'm a wee bit concerned about maybe those holes stretching slightly and they may need re-siliconed, but we'll see how it goes in due course. And if you look at the, I'm sitting here looking into the vestibule, you can see the vestibule is a good foot or so high. That's its highest point here. But there's plenty of cooking height, so flame shouldn't be a major problem. You should be able to cook here using either, as I've got, an alcohol stove, or some of the newer, fairly upright gas cookers. Should still be fine to cook actually, even with this shut. The only one thing I would say, I don't know if it is a downside, is the zip is one way only, so you cannot open the zip up at the top here for venting, extra venting. Although there is a built-in vent at the top, but it's not particularly large. So we'll see how that goes as well. From the rear you have a fairly good impression of just how roomy it actually is. It covers a lot of ground space. It's a large footprint, easy enough to put up. and with only 6 pegs, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plus a 7th if you want to use an end pole. Again, the peg weight is not heavy either, so it doesn't add a lot, and if like me you're using walking poles every day, that's negligible. So you really are looking at well under a sub-kilogram for a fairly stable and extremely roomy 3-season tent. But we'll give this a proper test in the near future, probably hopefully this week, and I can update you. So as I said before, it's just a first walk around of the tent really, just to give you first impressions. A lot of the videos on YouTube are quite old. I don't know if the design has changed much. I believe there is some minor changes to the fly and some of the detailing. So I'll run a proper video when we get the first wild camp in and do a wee updated video for you and probably give you a better impression of just how well it performs in the field. But thanks everyone for subscribing, and thanks again for watching one of my videos.